And we're live.
We're live. Is that true? Marcus says it, but I don't see it on my end. So I'm just gonna vamp for about 10 seconds while oh, there it is. So again, anybody who has seen this before might already know the way we do things here is we just kind of screw around for a few minutes to say hi, acknowledge that it's live, and then the rest of the show, it's not really live anymore, and we're just like recording, and this becomes the podcast. Sometimes Marco can throw comments up on the screen and maybe we would answer them, but usually we're not really looking at the chat room. So that's about it. If anybody comes across this link after it's pulled down, this is what's
I
going on.
retweeted it.
Cool.
So hopefully people come through.
I also just published my Apple video like seconds ago, so I'm not going to be able to, which always makes me so nervous when I don't get to like see everybody commenting like the sponsor segment is all black, or
Yes,
whatever
yes,
it is.
yes.
I screwed up this time. But here, I'm going to check that once, make sure there's no panic.
Yeah, this is pretty bold to do something live right after publishing a video.
Oh, well, yeah, living on the edge. It's just because I already have so many typos and everything I release. I just accept it as part of the cost of doing business.
You have to.
All right, let's do it for real. Hey, Sarah, did you watch the Apple event yesterday?
Yes, it was so fun. It felt like normal life almost, I wasn't at the event, but just kind of like disconnecting and worrying about iMacs. Colorful iMacs was kind of fun.
Yeah, I don't mind having these moments of like, oh, Apple's keeping us in this sense of like, oh, the world's still moving forward. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's like, I don't know, for me, it's a tradition that I've been watching Apple events since way before it mattered. And I wonder how much normal people still do that. Like, how did Apple events become the tech Super Bowl where we just kind of all tune in? Like I don't know. I think it's sort of amazing how much it's acknowledged. Like, imagine if every time there's a LG event, your whole Twitter feed was filled up with it. It's just not.
I know, and even like I was getting texts from my parents. Like my mom was like, she screenshotted a tweet from Marquez where he basically called him ugly, and she was like, I thought they were cool.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
no, I mean, yeah,
it's once your parents start tweeting about it and stuff, it's interesting because I feel like with COVID, it kind of accelerated them being cool. Of course, people always tuned in for iPhone events, but when it's not actually live, they make them so entertaining that I think it's easier for now normals to tune in to be entertained. It's a tight hour, and then they're out. They're like, okay, cool. I'm going to pick up some AirTags.
It's kind of like more like TV now. It's a little less it's like it was more like an award show format before or something, and now it's like I don't know, a series of shorts. It's like with a bunch of comedy mixed in and a very expensive, good-looking cinematography.
Yeah, I'm so glad they went the route of like a proper, essentially like short film vibe instead of still doing it live and then just broadcasting it from Steve Jobs Theater. I think that is super smart because that's what makes it so entertaining.
But what's funny is I say that it's like the awards show and this is more like a movie, but this year the Oscars says they're going to make it look more like a movie as well. Like Steven Soderbergh is directing it, and he's like, yeah, it's going to feel cinematic. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I don't.
That will be interesting.
All of a sudden, awards shows will be movies too.
I'm telling you, they have to spice that up because award shows, especially during these times, does anyone care? I mean, like they have to use something.
Any of them this year, like all of the from home, people kind of streaming from their webcams.
Yeah, it's like who cares?
I looked at
the
them
Grammys
because I was curious about the production.
Cool.
But
yeah,
right. Yeah, I mean, I saw the highlights. I saw the best ofs, but
yeah. Some of those Grammys performances were really cool, and it was well mixed and stuff. But when it comes to movie awards and stuff, I'm like, man, I'm like watching Thunder Force on Netflix. I don't even know half of these movies. I'm like so uncultured. I should probably work on that.
Yeah, to me, all that came out last year was Eurovision, and that's all I remember.
See, I haven't seen that.
Kong versus Godzilla. Well, if anybody doesn't know, Sara Dietschy is a YouTuber who was here a long time ago, back when this show was in its infancy. And I was on your show too, which is on pause at the moment, I believe. Is that the case?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mentioned I was talking about podcasts with Dave Mays, and it just got to the point where it was cutting into my main channel, and it was one of those things that obviously my main channel is my job, but it's also what I enjoy the most. I love talking to people and interviewing people, but the amount of time I was putting into it, the ratio of that to the attention it was getting slash opportunities that came from, like, sitting down, talking to someone who is awesome for an hour is always worth it. But I just had to start being like, okay, this can't come back until I figure out a way to do this sustainably. Because interview podcast too is just so hard. Because you're constantly having to schedule people. Yeah. I'm sure you understand, right? So, I like what you're doing here, because that's what I was talking to Dave about. I was like, okay, so I interviewed Meet Kevin. He's a finance YouTuber, and he has this like awesome switching setup. And so when I interviewed him, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I could do for that creative life to bring it back in a sustainable way to where, hey, I'm not even going to worry about a schedule, but I essentially, I could do it live. So it's already on its YouTube channel. And then if a moment stands out, I'm just going to forget about the clips, the full and the clips channel. But if a moment stands out, I'm just going to like recut that up and make it a YouTube video, like on my main channel, the Sara Dietschy channel. So it took me a while to kind of figure that out in my head, and I still haven't started it back, but I think that's where I've landed. You can let me know how the live streaming thing has gone for you.
Well, pretty good. I mean, like I was saying at the start of this, we record these live to tape effectively, so I don't really think about the fact that we are live too much. The point of it is to capture something and not really edit it. So we're getting the video edit done right away. I do I'm still doing a rough pass on the audio where we'll like do the ducking so that you don't hear our mics in between, stuff like that. Remove some noise if necessary, but a lot less editing. I'll say that you're not getting away with it for free though. Like there is definitely still a few extra hours, and I've gone through all that same thought process of like, this isn't the channel. Well, and for me, it's more about the audio for me than the video side, but it's not the place that is the job, like the numbers are totally different. Podcasting can make great sponsorship money if you scale it to a certain point. I think the difference between me and again, you're referring to an episode you did with Dave Mays. So if anybody wants to hear a lot more talk about this, there's a great episode on Dave Mays' podcast about this. But the challenge becomes that like you're putting a lot of time into something that is relatively smaller. It's going to be harder to grow it bigger. But the difference was that you were saying that like to you, is that I like love podcasts. Like podcasts are my main entertainment. So having like an audio show, like that's audio first, is just my favorite thing. And so that's why I kind of wanted to do it no matter what, even if it's not the biggest, because I just really like passive audio only entertainment. So I'm like, I'm stuck with it just because I enjoy it so much.
I was like, because you have all these people like in your corner being like, how you get the sponsorship money is audio only, grow the Apple Podcast, the Spotify, audio. And I'm like, okay, but those platforms, it's so hard to grow. And I'm also a YouTuber and I like the visual medium. So I'm kind of going the opposite too, where I'm like, how do I make this more visually enticing? How do I go YouTube first? Because it's like YouTube is where the growth is, and it's where the easy monetization. Of course, Google AdSense isn't the best, but I can instantly start monetizing there. I don't have to worry about like the 2-minute ad reads where I'm just like, hey guys, this podcast is sponsored by, because I also notice I love podcasts too. How I listen to them is I go skip, whether it's Spotify. That was me doing my Spotify skip, or the Apple Podcast skip where it's like 30 seconds. So it's so weird being a consumer of podcasts, but also trying to figure out, okay, how can I make this to where I enjoy creating it? It's not that hard to produce, but it's also video first too. But everyone's different,
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
so many things you can do.
Well, you set up a perfect segue there for talking about the event again. Apple Podcasts is now doing a subscription for pay model where So they weren't really clear in what they said on stage. So I looked some of this up afterwards. But basically, and there's still one thing I'm not clear about. But basically, yeah, you're able to charge your audience for like premium shows. And as a creator,
I'm gonna pull up the web page.
Yeah, let's find out more about it because I'm still trying to learn a little. But
Yeah.
you pay $20 for like an account, the correct kind of Apple account, kind of like an Apple developer account, $20 a year, and then there is a 70-30 split for the first year of your show, and then for subsequent years it's 85-15 split. So you're giving some money to Apple. That first year split sounds like a lot. Like that's pretty steep price. But I was looking into doing exactly this. Like I have some ideas that I've been wanting to do forever of like premium shows. And there's some great options out there already. Like Apple isn't the only way to do it. And my big concern that I don't know about yet is, are the Apple premium shows going to be available on all podcast players? Like, can I listen on Overcast and Castro? And like, is it an RSS feed? Because I don't want anything that's going to be locked into only Apple.
RSS.
Yeah, so is it Apple Podcasts only? That's what I'm afraid of.
Yes. And that was the biggest shocker is, none of this is via RSS. So I don't know if that statement was via for like uploading, so maybe they're saying, you can't have this version on Apple Podcasts if you're using an RSS uploader. Or if that means, okay, also you can't distribute it via RSS, because that was the biggest shocker. And what's interesting is you look at I wish I had my computer set up so I could show it. We're close, guys. But when you look at the analytics and how you view it, it's very similar to like the analytics of Simplecast. I think this is going to be interesting to see people just like go straight through Apple Podcasts now for uploading things. And it's funny with the people were like getting kind of upset with the split. And I don't know, I guess for there it is. I guess for being a YouTuber, you're just so used to like Google taking all of your money, where I'm like, that doesn't sound so bad, 30% the first year and then it goes down to 15. I guess it's different when it's, subscriptions directly from your audience. That is different because, you're facilitating most of that. It's not Google going out and getting ads from companies for your videos. So of course it's a little bit different, but I think that's fine that they drop it down to 15%. But like you said, this is the thing that's weird about podcasts right now, is it's becoming very insular. If all of these features and everything, well, obviously the features are unique to Apple Podcasts, but if you can't shoot it off to the other platforms, podcast is just becoming what podcasts have never been: exclusive.
Yeah.
The beauty of podcasts is the RSS feed.
It's so frustrating that all these companies don't acknowledge that it's a good thing that we don't have a YouTube of podcasts. Like that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing because it's like
they try though, because you can't make money.
Yeah, I know.
If it's not that, how are you going to make the billions of dollars?
It's like for people that the whole internet is Facebook to them because they don't understand that there's an open web with like millions of websites out there that anybody can create. Like, but you just live on Facebook. That's what, Spotify wants to do. And, Apple's not really doing that, but this is a step in that direction. Apple has been the way that we've had it open before because the iTunes podcast directory is the biggest and everybody's always been there and it's free. And they've let that kind of become an open ecosystem. And I just really hope that continues to exist because users don't necessarily think about this, right? They're not worried about like, am I keeping this open so that small creators can still grow? Because most of our favorite shows wouldn't exist if they had to, already be big. Like, we're not all NPR here. So,
yeah. And I think people also, they downplay YouTube as a big part of this. When it was so weird to see the announcement of Joe Rogan going to Spotify. And the way he framed it was so weird. And then everyone was like, oh yeah, you're going to go to Spotify and you won't have to worry about like freedom of speech. And they're just going to be like the best.
Sure.
And I was sitting here, I'm like, whoa, guys. Okay, YouTube has its issues. But in terms of like, I don't know, YouTube, Twitter, Spotify, when you start comparing kind of those different platforms in terms of what you can say, I'm like, YouTube is one of the best. I think YouTube gets like gets a lot of crap because they're in the center of a lot of these conversations because they have to make tough decisions sometimes. But like the only thing that they've ever done is like take down an Alex Jones episode. Joe went to Spotify and they took 70 episodes down. And I don't think, like, when it comes to podcasts, it only being on one platform, just, yeah, I guess what we're talking about, I think is not good. If it's one platform, you know, if it's Apple Podcasts or YouTube, maybe or a platform that people are used to and always on. But even Spotify, I don't listen to podcasts. I'm like, that's my mute. That's where I listen to music. It's hideous once you start, saving other things and trying to navigate other places and the way they do their ads and. Oh, it's a mess. I could probably talk about podcasts for like this. Oh my God, I know.
Well, we'll try not to. I realize it's kind of inside baseball because most people listening to podcasts don't make podcasts. But I'll just spell it out one more time for anybody that hasn't thought about this before, because I think it's important to think about. Like right now, anybody can just go and either for free with Anchor, or you can put a computer in your closet and set up a podcast as easily as a website. And that is amazing for the variety of voices that we have in the world. That's how so many small shows were able to develop and become big shows. Even Joe Rogan wouldn't be where he was or is now if he had to already have the Spotify deal. Like, he was a celebrity, but he probably wouldn't have got signed for some big Spotify deal out of nowhere, right? Like, what we want is an environment where we can all jump in there, just like with YouTube, and kind of prove ourselves. Like, you do something interesting, and that's why people listen to what you have to say, is based on the merit of what you're doing. And that could go away if all of these companies kind of try to turn it into network television. So I don't know. That's what I want to avoid.
Because
that's not what Apple was announcing,
work.
But yeah,
but
exactly.
It is interesting. The more, because, and you know what would be interesting to talk about is how, okay, we've made video for probably over a decade, right? For you, I mean, you started in photography, right? But you've been doing this for a while.
It's been that long.
Yeah. And so it's weird to be doing this stuff so long. And now from the Apple stage, hearing these people hear the words like creating content and creators. And I'm like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden we have kind of become the center of the world, because people know that like people are making money, right?
Sarah, I just remembered something.
What?
The iPhone 11 commercial had both of our podcasts in a few frames, mostly yours. Mine was totally cut off. So I saw yours. Actually, this is how I found mine, is people were tweeting at you like, look at this, you're in the commercial. And that's awesome. And then I watched it in slow motion. I'm like, wait a minute, that little corner is mine. And it was cropped off.
That's amazing.
But that was such a cool moment.
Yeah, such a cool moment. And so it is interesting because I remember maybe 5 years ago, everything was about gaming, right? And so because I do, a lot of videos with laptops or just computers in general, not as much recently, but everything was about gaming. And then this shift happened because I was, whether I was having conversations with Intel or Dell or other people, I'm like, hey guys, you understand this creator economy is even bigger than gaming. I think gaming even has a higher threshold to enter because, one, you have to be good at gaming, and two, you have to have a lot of intense gear, right? And so it has been interesting to see, oh my gosh, everyone's now paying attention to us, and it's cool. They're making products exactly for us, but just hearing those words from the Apple stage and from everyone, creators, the creator economy, God, all these venture capitalists are now all about the creator economy all of a sudden. Oh, interesting. Really, guys? Clubhouse is gonna like solve every problem in this world. Okay.
We'll see.
So yeah, it's a fun time to be alive, but it's kind of like there's so many tools and there's so many options. And I think that's why people are so excited about the podcast space, because they want one winner. Like they want whoever wins it all gets the bag. But I think what they're going to struggle with is people don't want all of podcasts in one place, right? And the underdog is YouTube. YouTube eats everything. Podcasts, YouTube. Like everyone's like Luminary and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm like, just YouTube. YouTube's everything.
Well, and numbers wise, Apple still is by far number one. Like for all the money that Spotify's putting into it, for all the effort that
Yeah.
everyone else has put into it, which Apple doesn't. Apple just lets it grow, and they dominate completely. So,
Yeah,
all right,
that's pretty funny.
let's move on from podcasts because we're the there's probably only one other podcaster listening. AirTags, the very
Yes.
long rumored product that we've all known was coming forever, finally dropped. $30, throw it anywhere. Looks like a little challenge coin. Did you ever use tiles? Like, have you used this kind of product before?
So I used a tile until it ran out of battery, and it's literally
Yep.
still
Yep.
on
Exactly.
my keychain.
Same here.
And I probably used it once or twice, and then it just ran out of battery. That's hilarious that it's still on my keychain. I should probably take that off. So I think
Is it the
I'll probably
changeable
put it on my
battery? 'Cause
keys. No, it's
Some
not.
of the tiles don't change. Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
Mine weren't.
Yeah. So I'm very stoked that the tile, you can just change the battery with a normal battery that you can find at a grocery store. That's great. That's very un-Apple-like, but I think because they're talking so much about the environment nowadays, they would get completely roasted if you had to just throw away a tile and buy a new one. So yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's cool. And I like that they added the privacy features where essentially, if you have a tile on you that is not a part of your Find My iPhone, it'll essentially beep at you and it'll let you know that like, hey, there's a tile on you when you start moving that is not in your Find My network or Find My, iPhone network thing.
It's not yours.
So I like those. Yeah, exactly. I like those privacy features because I think people see this and it's like, oh, let's track people, which can get kind of sketchy.
Yeah.
So I think that's very Apple of them because they're concerned about privacy. But it's definitely like probably the least, well, maybe the purple iPhone is the least exciting, but I think that purple's pretty.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that tracking thing. The idea is kind of two ways. Yeah, it's so that somebody can't slip a tile into your backpack and now all of a sudden they're following you around, which is an important thing to be able to do. But also if you have lost the thing, it would also notify people that are near it. So like, let's say your backpack is in a
Yes,
park,
yeah.
somebody's sitting by it. I imagine there's like a timer going, right? So after like 15 minutes of being near this other tile, then they're notified like, oh, somebody lost something near you. But I also wonder about if you're just like hanging out in a restaurant, like okay, let's say restaurant's open. Let's pretend you're hanging out in a restaurant and you're sitting next to somebody for 2 hours. Will eventually be like, this tile has been near you for a very long time. I guess maybe because their owner is nearby, it's okay. I don't know. I'm just really curious to see how it works.
Yeah, I think it's fine as long as like the owner is nearby, and also so they would have to be far away. But also it only beeps when you like move. So when there's like actual movement. But yeah, it's cool because it's like I think like you can scan it or something, and it takes you to a page with a phone number so you can contact the person, or something. I forgot how they said. I should probably like, research this more since I'm making a video soon. But here we are. But yeah, I thought the iMacs were awesome.
Yeah.
The white bezels,
that's-
people are
that's
allowed to
the
get
real
mad at the
excitement.
white bezels. Yeah. But like,
Yeah.
I don't understand people getting mad at the chin and like the colors. I'm like, guys, the iMac has always had a chin, and that's the reason why it's so thin. All the computer parts are down there. That's cool.
I was shocked at the response because I wasn't on Twitter when the iMac announcement started. I was just watching the feed and I wasn't looking at any social media. And then I kind of popped on like halfway through, and I was shocked that everybody didn't have the same response I did of like, wow, these look amazing. Like this is so cool. The colors are beautiful. They're so punchy. I can't believe these are made out of metal. They're super thin. They're like, the shape is great. I like everything about it. My first impression was so positive that I didn't expect anybody not to like it, but it seems
I
like
think
it's
with
split down the middle
events-
basically.
Yeah, it's one of those things with events. A few people will say an opinion, and that automatically becomes the opinion of everyone else, which is a bit annoying, but that's kind of like how the internet is, whatever. I love the fun colors. I feel like Apple has been so boring for too long. Originally with those pops of colors with the plastic computers, those were so cool. So make Apple fun again. I love them. They look so thin. And look how clean those are. I'm glad they have a silver version because that's what I started to get nervous about is they had a ton of pictures just with the colors. And I was like, there has to be either a dark gray or a silver. So I'm glad that exists. But I think those look great. Man, I think those look awesome.
Is the orange one close enough to peach for you, or does it not quite qualify?
I don't know, because look at that yellow too. That yellow.
The yellow's my
almost
favorite. I really like that.
Yeah, I really like the yellow. The orange might be like too orange, but I don't know. That is literally like a peach computer. It could be.
You really kind of need two. Like, I mean, I would love to have like a yellow and a purple. Maybe like a blue and orange to get a bit of that like orange and teal Hollywood look going. I mean, they really look good together, so it motivates you to have more than one. But we all have to remember as well, this is the 24-inch. We're going to get a 27-inch eventually, and I'm betting it won't be so colorful, and we'll have our black bezels and stuff. So like that, I'm completely sure that's still coming. So don't panic too much, but.
Yeah, and that's one of those things with this event. At the end, you're like, okay, this is cool, but. Where's the new processor, or but it makes sense. It was one of those events where it was like, it wasn't as exciting as I wanted it to be, but it was necessary. You need to get the M1s and everything else. The M1 and the iPad's cool. And I think that's what a lot of people were talking about on Twitter is like, okay, we don't need iPad OS and Mac OS. Like, we're done. Let's merge things, guys. Come on. And I think that's where Apple is still struggling, is being over in Windows land and being so used to 2-in-1s. I know people hate the idea of a touchscreen on a freaking MacBook. But I'm like, guys, I want that. I also want an iPad with Mac OS. I think obviously they want to keep it separate because they're catering to very specific demographics. I think Apple can do both, and it wouldn't upset people. It would give people even more reason to upgrade their iPad to upgrade a MacBook. Merge things. I want touch everywhere. I want Mac OS everywhere. It should be easy. Everything's the M1.
I know what you mean. I don't really have that inclination. I think because I love Mac OS in a traditional way so much. Like, I'm so attached to having like the superpowered desktop system that when I imagine that, I'm always afraid of it being dumbed down towards the touch version, right? Like oversimplified towards iPad OS.
But it's already,
it could be good.
The last Mac OS. The last Mac OS is it's just ready to be touched. I feel like, it's already, if it has
looks
dumbed
like
down, it already has. Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing is like Windows hasn't, they tried the whole tile thing, but Windows 8 was terrible. But even with Windows 10, it's like they kind of just gave up on that, and it's just Windows 10 with touchscreen. And it's cool when you're editing a photo and you want to do some stuff in Lightroom. And, maybe Apple will come up with some like switch back and forth, although that's not super Apple. That's just me writing a wish list. But, Windows has done it for like how long? 6-7 years? I'm confident. Apple, do it, please.
I know it can work, but I don't know. Well, I'm a little unsure, I'm unconfident about it. We'll see. But overall, I do feel like Apple's reached the most like well-balanced product lineup that they have had in years, where a normal person can walk into an Apple store and it's going to be, I think, like easier than ever to choose what you actually need. It was getting really confusing. And, maybe about 4 years ago, I was, really shopping for like PCs. Like I was like, maybe I'm just done with, like, I love Mac OS more than anything, but none of the hardware is what I want. Obviously, we've had a big upswing since then. It's been on a good track for quite a long time now. But now it's really at this like refined level where even if you don't know much about computers, you could walk in and be like, I'm looking for a family computer and I want a bigger screen. And then you get an iMac, or, I'm a student and I need to be portable, or I'm a video editor. You're going to get almost the same performance out of all of these. Like, very, very similar. The only real difference is going to be sustained high performance, where things will get throttled if they don't have active cooling. So the MacBook Air and the only the MacBook Air will eventually throttle if it starts to overheat. And then everything else that has a fan in it will be able to go longer, because as it heats up, the fans will kick in and it'll cool it down. But other than that, like, your overall performance is going to be fantastic on any Mac that you buy right now, and you'll be able to
what do you say
edit 4K
if I walked
and
in,
like.
But what if I walked in and I was like, hey, I love Apple, I love MacBooks. I want your latest and greatest, but I don't tell them that I'm a Premiere editor. It still sucks. Like the M1 is still very fresh, and if you're not,
You mean it still sucks that you're a
course-
Premiere editor? Is that the
right? Roasted. But like, think about how big that audience is with Adobe products, and they're getting there slowly. But
Yeah.
Premiere's still in beta. Totally. There's still, you know, a lot of VM software. The software has not even gotten close to catching up. I'm glad that Final Cut and Chrome and, you know, Photoshop and Lightroom is fine right now on the M1.
Are you editing on an M1? I don't have one actually.
Oh, no.
So I
no,
just
I
tested
have
one for review.
but like I'm literally using a $2,000 M1 MacBook to like watch Hulu at dinner. It's a travesty. Right. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's gonna be awesome in 2 years, but I think there's so much hype with the M1. It's like perfect. The battery life is amazing. I'll give it that. But it's just like, oh, this is like, you know, a new architecture, and it's going to take some moments to catch up and get to the level that people were used to. But again, maybe someone gets a computer and they choose, okay, maybe I'll just switch to Final Cut. Maybe I'll switch to Resolve. I'm glad there's Resolve, because I hate the thing of, oh, just use the software that's made by the same company that makes your computer. I hate that.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad that Resolve is kind of picking up the pace, but it's, yeah, I wish like the M1, when the M1 MacBook first came up, like I legitimately just like bought a tricked out one, and I was like, oh my gosh, is this me like going back to MacBook? And I'm like, no, still not there, but it's right. It's a good play for Apple. It makes sense, because it's going to make sense for 95% of the people who want one.
And you know, it's true. I've started to forget about Premiere more and more as I'm like further away from having used it. And now I'm in that position of like primary edits are in Final Cut, and we still use Resolve for actually more and more. We're using Resolve more often, and like Resolve is amazing, and I think is going to become enormous soon. Like the fact that it's free and it's so good, a lot more people are going to be using it. But I had kind of just forgot to take a look at, you know, what's Premiere doing, because these machines they're more than enough to handle Photoshop and Lightroom, even if they weren't fully optimized for the new architecture. They were running fine. Like, you know, the new M1 processor is so fast that it didn't matter that much if it was in emulation. Whereas Premiere is just so heavy that like I imagine it does matter more. Like you're more sensitive to
that's
what's going on,
100%.
How it's running.
Because essentially, like for me, and I imagine there's some people out there who like use their laptop either as their main computer. I don't, but like you need to be able to do everything. You need to be able to open up Premiere. So that's why it's like those. They're not called Ultrabooks, but just 2-in-1s, you know, with Windows. Like I can touch it, I can use OneNote, I can be in Lightroom and like use a pen and do all those things. But at the same time, it's like, you know, there's an Intel chip in there. It's an architecture that everyone's familiar with, so I can open up Premiere and it works. Of course, I'm not going to be doing like super intense compressed 4K for my A7S III. I'll probably have to make proxies for that, but I can still do it. So I'm in a weird place with Apple where it's like I love using my iPad, but more times than often it just sits on my shelf, because it's like when I take a computer out with me, I need to be able to do everything. So now an M1 MacBook is kind of like an iPad to me without touch. So it's like completely pointless. You know, when I have a laptop, I need to be able to open up Premiere. Even if I only do it 10% of the time, that has to be a requirement. So yeah, I'm kind of in a weird place where it's like, I like my iPad. The M1 MacBook is kind of pointless to me for those reasons. So we'll see. Yeah.
No,
I don't know. Maybe I need
that's really
to
good perspective to have. Yeah. No, I mean, good to know. Like I hadn't been thinking about the Premiere perspective so much lately. And so I guess maybe I'll revise what I was saying of how good the product line is, that we're on the verge of it being really perfect. Like, you know, we're going to need the Pro machines. Obviously, we're all still waiting for that. That's what I'm waiting for before I buy one. And we're going to need all of the software to catch up. You know, there's still audio plugins as well, haven't all been ported over. So, you know, it was, I think, as clean of a move to a new architecture as we could hope
much
for,
better
really,
than
but it's still not
the
done.
Microsoft Surface ARM.
Yeah.
It's like,
right,
is anyone paying attention to that?
I'm sure not. Cool. So what are your thoughts on an iMac for yourself? Is this something you'd actually use? Are you all about MacBooks or I guess laptops in general? Because obviously you don't go back and forth with PCs, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this past year, that's why I just kind of stopped making videos about laptops because I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. So this isn't very interesting to me. But I had an interesting year where, my high power PC was at my office, but I was going to my office less. And the thing I had at my apartment was an iMac 5K with an i9. It was fairly souped up. And that did well for me. Like for A7S footage, I did have to make proxies for like every single video if I was doing 4K, which is annoying. But it was good. Now I have this like tricked out Puget PC with like an AMD 32 core Threadripper, like a 3080,
Cool.
and it's like rock and roll, man. So in terms of like I've said this in videos. I think, the iMac 5K was some of the best value you could get. Certainly in an all-in-one, because once you look at like PC all-in-ones, they're just so clunky and ugly, and you don't get a really good color accurate display. So I was a big fan of the iMac previous to this. And, I think this will be a beautiful addition to hair salons who, put it in the front to make appointments. And
Yeah,
that's
totally.
what this is right now.
that is what it's the best for, is being put
Yeah.
into retail. Like it's going to look so good because you can match your
It'll
store.
look good for
and,
those
yeah,
people. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I want an excuse to have one. I don't know if it'll make any sense for me. I always would have wanted the bigger screen. This would be a small one. Like,
Yeah.
this is also the sort of like, I also think about it from a creative perspective of like, I kind of want one just as, not as a prop, but to be in the background of things. Like
Yeah.
when we do photo shoots, when we are shooting YouTube videos, like anything, it's just like having
Yeah.
something with a punch of color in the background can make a big difference. Like it's really nice, like that
Yeah.
family computer can be a lot less boring. So I want one. I don't
Yeah,
need one,
I should buy the orange one and just put it like right back here. Like don't even use it. It could just be like a paperweight.
yeah,
I can turn
has your
it
logo on there all
around
the time
when I
and
want it. Yeah.
Worth it. Totally worth it.
Worth it. Hashtag worth it. But yeah, at this moment, I'm probably not getting one. I need to finish my M1 MacBook review so I can sell that because I did the mistake of like tricking it out of like 2 terabytes of SSD because I legitimately was like, oh, I can use this, but it's become abundantly clear it can't be my go-to laptop. So yeah, I need to
that's
finish
too
my
bad.
video so I can just sell it.
I would recommend looking at Resolve some more. Like
Yeah.
there's so much there. Even
Yeah.
as a really dedicated Final Cut user, like I love Final Cut, but I mean, I think everybody from all ends is looking at Resolve like, why don't we have these features? From Premiere's end, it's like, why can't I do that? And from Final Cut's end, it's like, why
Yeah.
can't I do that? Which is nice that they're just all
what
there.
got
There's all these
me-
great options.
Yeah, you know what got me on Resolve is there are so many things that were faster, and I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. Like the fact that for motion and stuff, it encourages you to do motion of frames and zooming like in the program monitor, right? Like not go and do little keyframes and stuff. And I actually got really quick with that. But there was 2 things that I just could not get used to. One was the syncing video and audio with external audio is a mess in Premiere. It's so easy. You just highlight the 2-3 video clips and the audio source, right click synchronize, and it does it perfectly. And then the second thing with Resolve is the fact that you can't, when you're editing in a timeline, it is super smooth. So it's kind of reminiscent of Final Cut in that way. But you can't make edits while it's playing, if that makes sense. Like with podcasts and even with like maybe some of my more vloggy stuff, I'll just hit the space bar and play, and I'll like adjust the audio live. I'll be like, oh, that needs to like fade in, and I'll literally like click the keyframes in the audio while it's playing. Resolve, you have to like press spacebar again, make sure it's stopped, and then add keyframes. So in Premiere, it always gets crap for kind of being sluggish, but my favorite parts of Premiere is like it can be playing and you could be moving like video assets from over here to over here. You can be moving audio around. I know that probably seems like too niche of a thing, but it's like how I edit.
Right. Yeah. Once you get used to a certain way of doing it, then you can't have it taken away from you. So
Exactly.
yeah. Cool. There's one more thing I wanted to hit on the iMacs. Oh yeah. Anybody wondering about what the problem is with white bezels? Because like there's a big reaction against like, it's great, but I wish there was black bezels. It's not just aesthetic, because the perspective that Apple came to this from, which I get, is that most people looking for at the entry level computers, I don't think care or think about it. It's all the people that bought white iPhones, which I always thought like, why do you want a white front on it? Like the gold back is beautiful, but I want a black bezel on everything. And the reason for that is that it's a better frame for viewing content. You wouldn't want to go to a movie theater with white frames around the outside of your movie. Like black vanishes more. It lets the
Especially
content
when
stand
it's
out
like,
more.
Yeah, when it's not on too, right? When you just have a phone, it's like, oh, you don't have like white chunks too. Totally. So even when it's just sitting there.
Yeah, so it's not that the white is ugly, it's that the white is less conducive to content
less functional
consumption. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think Apple chose to make the product look as good as possible when it's sitting in the store on display, because it's going to sell more. And a lot of people don't think about this and will be totally fine with the white. So I think from Apple's perspective, it probably was totally the right decision. I just want black for myself. So hopefully we get that on the next one.
I'm excited for the future machines.
Yeah, no, the next WWDC, that's the one, which I wish it was going to be in person, but we did get a little bit more though. We got iPad Pros, some bigger updates than I expected. I thought there'd be like a nice little hardware bump, but this is always the machine that is so overspec'd that I don't know what to do with it. Like I don't know how to really properly use everything inside of it. And they did it again, like even more. Some of these upgrades, I'm like, who can put this to use? It's just so much going on in there.
Yeah, I have, a 11-inch iPad Pro from 2019, and I'm like, I don't feel the need to upgrade. It's not sluggish. It's a good problem to have, right? Obviously, the XDR display will be great for people. And I think the biggest thing, and I don't use an iPad as a computer, so I don't need this, but that having full, being able to plug into an external monitor and it to take up the full display is huge for people, because people want to use their iPad as their main computer, right? And I think that enables more people to do that. So that's probably the biggest thing. But yeah, like it's so funny to like, okay, now that M1's in there, oh, so much more powerful, but it's like, it was already so powerful.
Yeah, it was pretty good already. What do you use your iPads for? Like, what do you actually do? What tasks do you find it most useful for?
Yeah, I mean, I used it more again when I was like out and about, and I would actually use it as a second display. There's this, even when I was using Windows laptops, there's an app called, what's it called? There's an app where you can use it as a second display on a Windows computer. So that's always fun to have, if I'm at a hotel, just to have a second display, or, watching content, writing notes in OneNote. But I am definitely not the key demographic, because now that I barely travel at all anymore, I don't use it at all, barely at all. So I'll use it now that, I have this like good PC setup. I'll use it like for writing notes in OneNote. But that's annoying too, because it's like I love handwriting notes in OneNote, but I have so much stuff on my desk already. I haven't found like a good iPad stand for it to go up to like, okay, it's up now. I can watch content. I can scroll on Twitter. Let's bring it down to write notes. So I think for me, it's just hard to put it in my workflow, because it also feels like awkward at my like at home desk setup, if that makes sense. I was used to just like traveling with it and like watching Netflix on the plane, writing notes if I had an idea, using it as a second display with my laptop, even if it was a Windows computer. So this past year, I'm kind of like, that's cool.
Yeah, I've never found its really important use for me. Like, it's always the one thing that, like, if I'm going to leave something at home, it usually can be the iPad. I did really enjoy it. This is going to become a good professional use for it coming up, and I just did this the other day with our iPad Pro. Is during a photo shoot, we're shooting tethered into Capture One. So the photos are going right onto the MacBook Pro. They're being stored and backed up onto other hard drives. But Capture One has a feature called Pilot that lets it stream the photos coming in to a remote iPad that is just on the Wi-Fi network.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and we're trying to use
like
it
give
to
to a
rate the
client?
photos. Yes. So this is super powerful. This is what we're doing. We're in
Yeah.
a studio and we just hand the iPad to the client. They can wander off. They can be wherever. And we're hoping they'll be able to rate the photos as they came through. And unfortunately, Capture One kind of bugged out on us and it didn't work as planned. But they were able to like preview the things that are coming on their own screen, see them really big. And now what's going to be interesting about this is the screen. So we didn't talk about this yet, but the screen updates are really, really impressive. Like this is now a very truly HDR screen. Apple's calling it Super Liquid Retina. No, it's called Liquid Retina XDR, which,
I mean,
the
be
name's
great
sort of
for
cheesy,
those
but
professional workflows.
Yeah,
when you want
this
those
is gonna,
clients to see the best thing possible.
it will look
see it in the
better.
best way possible.
It'll look better than the MacBook screens, which is that's really weird. Why can't I want
Apple
this? I want
loves
this in my
their iPad
MacBook.
Pros. Yeah.
They do, yeah. But it's got like 600 nits of I think sustained brightness and 1,000 of peak, which really is becoming like true HDR. It's when you're in that environment, either the photography thing I said or Frame.io also has a new feature called Camera to Cloud. And if you're using streaming plugins like Teradek stuff, so we have small HD bolts, which are Teradek compatible. And you need some other stuff. I don't know exactly what. Somehow your signal is getting into a computer. Now Frame.io will stream that video feed to everywhere that you want it. So that can both be remote production people that are in another city or at home. But it also means everybody on set could have their own iPad viewing it in true HDR, as they just like walk around wirelessly, and they can like be rating shots as they come through, commenting on stuff. Super powerful stuff. And the fact that it'll be like the best monitor possible in those high-end environments is a big deal. That's kind of niche, but it's also really cool.
Yeah. And if they keep doubling down on these niches, I think they're going to have really happy customers who, zero in on those things. So it's weird I feel like I'm always being talked to as a creator, but it's weird to be in this place with Apple and being like, I feel kind of awkward with these products because usually I speak from the heart, how they would apply in my life. So I have to kind of put on the cap of other people. Like, okay, my fiance, John, who draws in Procreate and is a big person like that. Okay, like let's look through your lens for the iPad. Okay, you're a Final Cut editor. Let's review the M1 MacBook, with the cap on that I'm like a Final Cut editor who uses, all of these apps that are native to the M1, not necessarily these things that are trying to mold themselves, like a lot of the Adobe products, into something that it's not yet comfortable on. So great for very specific people, and I think they're on the right track.
I did get one of the features wrong, by the way. It's 1,000 nits full screen brightness and 1,600 peak, which is suddenly a lot better than what I just said a minute ago. But.
Yeah.
It's same here. But so my wife uses the drawing stuff sometimes. I can't draw, so it's no good to me. But she's doing that right now for renovating, and so she's like, we're taking photos of the house, and she's drawing on top of it. Like, here's the shape that the deck's going to be. And when you see that, you're like, oh, that's like an Apple commercial. Like that's what they want you to be doing.
Exactly.
But it's not always everybody that is actually able to do that. What did we miss? I know there's other small stuff that happened at the event, but obviously, like, I was very consumed by the iMac stuff. That's what got me going and got me excited. Oh, wait, one little feature. This is so narrow, but Apple TV, they replaced the remote. Great, right? It just needed that. But the one feature that I think is really cool is being able to calibrate your TV with your iPhone. I don't know if it's worth going out and spending $200 on an Apple TV just to calibrate your TV, but I love this feature. Like it's one of those things I'm like, yes, of course this is possible. You have a camera and sensors on your phone. The way that they show it in the demo is like you hold up your phone and you put it up against the TV so that the screens are facing each other. And it's that's so interesting to me because like
Yeah.
you've seen this happen if you've ever calibrated a computer monitor, like that's how you put the sensor up against it and it's doing the same kind of thing. But I'm just like, oh yeah, like I would like more accurate colors on my TV. It's not essential, but
Yeah.
especially when I watch my own videos back, because that's what I it's kind of like my final test after I make a video. I publish it usually before I see this. Then I go and put it up on the big 4K TV. I'm like, okay, how does this actually look? Like, what did I screw up here? Where are all the mistakes? And that's for me. That's when color accuracy would be nice to be like, oh, I know what the best possible version of this actually looks like.
Yeah.
Again, this is probably pretty niche, but I think it's cool.
Yeah. And that's what Apple's good at.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, we've been saying that a lot lately, especially with iPad Pro as well.
Very Apple, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, so it depends on which products. Like, yeah, iPad is very niche. Apple TV, it's feeling like it's going more and more niche. Like, I have Apple TV, the app built into all my TVs, so
Exactly.
it's hard for
now
me
they're on
to imagine that I'm going to
LGs and
spend this money.
Samsungs. I will say the reason why I still use my Apple TVs is to have easy connection with AirPods.
Yeah, right.
To watch TV with AirPods.
Yeah, totally. And you know, the AirPlay works better. Like I've on my LG, I do have AirPlay, but it's not as good. I mean, it seems to be a little less seamless than when I'm using an actual Apple product. What kind of TV are you using now? Like, do you have opinions on TVs?
Yeah. Yes. I have like a 77-inch LG OLED, which is beautiful, and
Nice.
a Samsung 8K QLED, which is 65. I wish it was actually a little bit bigger when it comes to 8K. But yeah, those are fun because you get both the flavors of OLED and QLED. It's so funny. Like we've been wanting to watch that movie. It's like a Pixar movie that. What is it?
Is it Soul?
Called? It's Soul.
Is it the-
yes. And
yeah.
I saw there's so much black in it with a black background, and I'm like, I refuse to watch that movie until I can watch it on my OLED. So we still need to set it up in our new space here. But yeah, I don't have any pressing opinions. Only that I really enjoy the Samsung QLED because with OLED, you know, they always like to have screensavers up. They don't want an image to stay on the TV for too long because you can have a little bit of that burn-in. Turns out if you're trying to use a TV as a little bit of an aesthetic background, that's terrible. Because I use the Samsung, they have such cool backgrounds that are just like slightly moving, and they're not distracting at all. And I would use that actually as like a video background quite often. But the OLED will always want to turn off, or it'll have their backgrounds, and you can only display their backgrounds, which is just like huge pictures,
Right.
like moving every 3 seconds, which is really distracting. So that's again a very niche reason to not prefer OLED, because people probably don't care what's on the screen when it's not there. But I just love the Samsung backgrounds. I think they look so great in a space, because if you have people over, you're not watching TV, like you don't want just a black box on your TV, you know?
That's
and so
true.
Samsung has really great backgrounds to make it look like art.
It's something I actually didn't really like about my LG, which most things I've been like over the moon. Like I really, really like it. It's the first time I've had a extremely nice TV. I've always just had, you know, good enough TVs before.
Yeah.
And yeah, mine's OLED as well, but it doesn't have nice art like that. Like I don't have a nice screensaver. And that's actually something I missed from
That's
the
what I'm
Apple
saying.
TV when
Yeah.
you, those like 4K video loops that Apple does, like the drone stuff, is best in class.
It's
Like
enough
that's like
to
the
have.
best looking. Yeah. But I don't have anything that good on mine, so I do find that missing. And then like one other, okay, this is, I don't even know if I'd use it, but I don't like that it's missing, is in Apple Fitness Plus, you're able to use an Apple TV the same way you can with like an iPad or an iPhone, where it's communicating with your Apple Watch and with the Apple Fitness stuff that you're doing, so that you're getting live feedback from it. And you can't do that if it's just the Apple TV app. You need the actual hardware to have that communication. And like, it's just one of those sort of like wanting to be an Apple completionist of like, there's some features I can't take advantage of. It would be like I'm missing 10% of the experience. So
Yeah.
I like them to find more things like that. I like that type of feature. Those specific ones aren't actually very important, but I don't know. I've always got that it's like, you know, you just like wanting everything to be like in a straight line. It's like you want to have all of your ecosystem, you know, line up in a way that's like, yeah, I'm optimized all the way through. So
Yeah.
but they
Yep.
could do a few more of those things.
Yeah. Apple. Yeah. They're always crushing it, but also so close on things. But I think that's
here's
every
another
company.
Here's another one that is going to be a thing to think about is we've got a restriction on M1 computers in terms of ports. So they've got 2 USB 4, 2 Thunderbolts. And
I was
then
disappointed with that on the iMac.
Yeah. And then a big plus, though, is on the iPad now, that one port has become Thunderbolt and USB 4. Again, not sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but it's cool. Like, it's so frustrating that it's like I want to get hyped up about these things. If you tell me these things about a computer, I'd be like, oh, amazing. Like, yeah, that's great because I'm going to use them all the time. And when it's on an iPad, it's like, great.
Exactly.
I'm going to stare at them and feel like I'm letting my computer down by not doing heavy enough tasks.
I'm going
on it.
to just watch Netflix in my bed for hours on this. And that's the only thing I'm going to use it for.
But it'll be real HDR now. So at least
Exactly.
you know, Netflix will look better.
Exactly.
I'm really glad to see this move though, this like Thunderbolt USB 4 unification, which promises to fix some of the issues we've had in the past with USB 3 and Thunderbolt, which has sucked. You know, I hate that the like default white cable that comes with my Mac doesn't pass data through it, which I think a lot of people don't even realize. Like it's only power. It doesn't do anything else. So if you're like, which I've been in this situation a few times where I'm like, oh, like I gotta just transfer a few things off a drive, but I don't have a cable around. Oh, of course I have a cable right here. It's my power cable. It doesn't do it. It doesn't do anything. It's like, are you kidding me?
I didn't even think about that.
There's no label on it. Yeah, that stuff drives me nuts. But there are elements of USB 4 that are hopefully will fix some of this. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think that's the event. We got all the
event.
important things. That's
Good
everything
job,
I had in
Apple.
my notes. Yeah, good job us for
Good job on the
going through it.
videos. I'm always a fan.
So what about you? What's going to be next in your life now that you're in Texas? I mean, huge move. You're in New York for years. You're not anymore.
Years. It's one of those
What's it
things
gonna mean?
where I'm pumped. Like already, I think my human is better. I'm just close to family, and it's good to have that stability in such a weird year. But I didn't anticipate. I should have taken like 2 months off of work because moving cross country into a new space. I'm so used to like small apartments in New York. We now have like a 2-bedroom plus like a den area. So it's almost like a 3-bedroom. So we have more space. Making it, you know, work for YouTube, work for life is actually like a way bigger challenge than I thought. So still trying to figure out the setup and everything and also do my job at the same time has actually been kind of a mess. So talk to me in a couple months and I'm sure everything will be hunky-dory and great.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you can't judge it while you're in the middle of unpacking boxes. That's not a good time to evaluate how well it's going. But no, I could totally.
But it's good good for a change.
Yeah, well, and it'll open up new doors as well. Like there's things you'll be able to do you couldn't before.
Exactly.
I was listening. Colin Smear were talking to Mr. Beast about how like North Carolina affected his channel, like being in a smaller, more rural area. And he's like, oh yeah, like I couldn't be doing the types of videos I do because like I can have
Your
warehouse
dollar goes
space.
farther.
Like you can do so much. There's just so much space, and the people watching don't really know or care where you're coming from. So it depends what type of content you produce. Where, you know, New York has this huge advantage, or, you know, any of the big cities where you can walk out the door and something is interesting right in front of you. So, you know, I'm in Calgary, which is actually, you know, it's like a cold Texas. But there is that same thing of like, if you want something great to shoot, you kind of have to like create it or work for it a little more. Whereas if you're in LA or New York, you just go outside and like things are cool and nice and there's just stuff around you to film. So I don't know. That's like the experience, the difference I find between them. So you got to like
found myself
create the
shooting
advantage.
inside. Yeah. Like I was shooting inside so much that I was like, it doesn't matter where I am, you know?
Right.
And like also we're in like a very central place. So we still have like a cool downtown area. There's more direct nature. People are always like, oh, well, you have Central Park. And even if you're living like I know 25 blocks away doesn't, if Central Park is, like 60th, and us at one point were living at, I sounded Texan right there, living. We were living at 40th. And people probably think, oh, that's like, you're so close. But like when you're busy and you're like tired from the day, taking the subway or walking 20 blocks, it's just like, it is a chore. It's like a major chore. So the access to nature too, and having a car here is huge. So, I'm excited.
Walking
I just gotta get
20
everything
blocks
set up.
to go for a walk.
Exactly.
Last thing I wanted to hear from about you is what's your camera situation right now? How are you feeling with your camera setup? What are you shooting on today?
A7S III. I love it so much. It's funny. I've had a few comments recently like, Sarah, you haven't really talked about the A7S III. And I'm like, my initial video on it is all you need to watch. It's everything that we ever wanted, period. Maybe I can talk about the Kodaks being a nightmare to edit in Premiere, but like really it's 4K. It looks beautiful. The standard picture profile now looks beautiful. Sony colors are now great, which is something I never thought I would say. Like I love
finally.
the standard profile. That's what I'm using right now. And so I tested out the FX6 recently. So I definitely, it's just so, when you're used to shooting on hybrids and you go to something like that, it's just like, it makes so much sense. I don't know why people give crap about the menus too, because I was like, this is really easy. Like you have all these physical buttons, the quick menu you can touch. I actually liked the menu. I don't know. I think that's one of those opinions that one person says and then people just like copy other people's opinions. Cause I was expecting it to be a nightmare. Like, oh my God, everyone hates the FX6 menus compared to the A7S III. And I'm like, I like them more cause there's more of a focus. I don't know. So one day, once I'm done like spending money on our condo, maybe I'll purchase an FX6. Yeah, because life is expensive right now.
Yeah, I hear that. I still haven't shot with an A7S III. There hasn't been one around me at all, so I haven't had any opportunity to use it.
It's everything.
But that's what I hear. Yeah, I mean, it looks amazing, and like all of Sony's lineup is so good right now, which is frustrating because I just haven't been shooting any Sonys for the last year because I sort of doubled down on my Canon ecosystem, but I also Sony's awesome too. You were also talking about Blackmagics the other day. Are you actively using them at all, or?
So it's so funny. Cause like I love their cameras, but I use them only for a very, very specific purpose. So I have had Blackmagics for like literally a decade. I mean, I started with the original Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera when the battery was crap. Well, the battery has always been crappy, but those original pocket cameras, because they were so small, they had a ton of issues. They were so finicky, but man, the image you got out of them was just astounding for the price. So I've always been a huge fan of their pocket cinema camera line, and I've always had them. And so I have 3 of them, and whether it's like a 3-camera podcast setup or an interview where it's locked off, you don't have to worry about autofocus. I use those always for that purpose. So, even if I don't use them for like 6 months, I've found so much value in just having 3 of the same camera for, easy post-production as well, getting the same look for 3-person camera interviews. Cause I always end up needing that at least once or twice per year. And that might not seem like enough to have a setup like that, but because they are cheap cinema cameras, I feel like it's perfect for that purpose. Because even right now, I only have a Sony A7S III and a A6400 because I had a lot of random Sony cameras and I needed to just like focus it. And so that does the purpose for like a 2-cam setup for my YouTube stuff. It has good autofocus and stuff, but it goes a long way to have the same exact cameras and to have 3 of them.
Yeah, 2 of the same brand never match as well as you imagine they would. Like, even if they have the same color profiles, the sensors are different. It does look different. Yeah. Yeah,
and I could talk about this forever, and I do have to peace out because I have another meeting. But the last thing I will say is I loved the FX6 so much for the physicality of it, for the things you could plug in, the way you can hold it, the physical buttons, all the things. Everything, all of the Sony cameras now with the A7S III with the update, you can have S Cinetone on it. But even matching S Cinetones with the A7S III FX6. It has the same sensor, it has the same processor. They still look different. The standard profiles from them, because I was like, oh, when I'm streaming, I need a good standard profile. The still profile in the FX6 looks so different than the standard. So that's why I was kind of annoyed, because I'm like, I don't have the time right now to like figure out a perfect LUT to load into the FX6 that matches the A7S.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm not going to spend $6,000 to get something that works like halfway, and I'll have to spend like a month figuring out. So colors, guys, it doesn't matter if it's a fancy cinema camera, like matching things and having just the same camera goes a long way if you're doing stuff like that.
Yeah, that can be the most important thing. Well, I won't keep you any longer. You got to run, Sarah. Thank you so much for your time.
We need to do a part 2 where we like only talk about cameras, because now I'm jazzed up. I feel like
I'm just trying to not make that every episode. It's like all I I know. I'm like that too. It's all I want to talk about. There's so many good ones too, so it's been a good year.
Yeah.
But
we'll
anybody that's not already following Sarah,
perfect.
now's the time. Sweet. Yeah. Once you have like your setup locked down, and I have a streaming setup that I don't have to set up from scratch every time.
Yeah.
We'll come back.
Thanks for having me. This is fun. I love talking
Cool.
here.
Thanks, Sarah. And there, that's the end of the real show.
Thanks for having me.
But, and thanks for watching, everybody that's here. We're sorry we couldn't answer anything, but I see y'all, and I just said y'all because Sarah's here.
Howdy, y'all. Yes, I need to inundate
You're
my
gonna get your
Canadians.
accent back. Like you're gonna like
Did
have
you
such a.
hear
You're
that
gonna be so
slip?
Texas soon.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that
But
slip
you're gonna be doing it every day. It's just gonna happen.
I know. And sometimes we like joke around and we like really string out our words.
Lean into
and then
it?
And then you start doing it for real. It's dangerous, man.
Oh, man. But it's good. It's a good look.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll chat with you later.
Thanks for having
See
me.
ya.